All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the LPEA Board of Directors meeting for December 11th. Go ahead and let's see. I'll call the meeting to order, and let's start the meeting off with Pledge of Allegiance, as is our common tradition. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Thanks again, Drew. Very much appreciate that. And then we haven't worked closely enough with Janelle to get this placed on the agenda for every month, but we're going to continue to do a safety moment to start our meeting, just to really enforce the safety culture that's extremely important within LPEA. I had indicated that I would divvy this up, but I have not done that, so I will take charge of our safety moment for today. And what I want to talk about is an interesting aspect of cold weather and no snow. And the safety moment is to be concerned about unexpected slippery spots, unexpected ice patches. We have freeze thaw happening, and it's easy to ignore the fact that we might have icy patches and slippery roads because we don't see snow all over the place. So, from a personal level and a professional level and an LPEA level, let's all make sure that we're being very aware of where those slippery spots may be. So there's our safety moment for the day. Moving into member comments and concerns. Let's see, Graham, will you go ahead and give us a preamble for that?
Yes. The board encourages comments about the cooperative from its members. The board will take all member comments under consideration, but it will not provide a response during the member comment period. The board asks that each participant's comments pertain to cooperative business. Those wanting to address the board during the public comment period are granted 5 minutes to address their topics. Lengthy comments to the board should be submitted in writing. Formal complaints must be filed in writing and submitted in compliance with applicable board policy. Comments from the public will be directed to the entire board, not to any individual. No personal attacks shall be allowed. Failure to follow these requirements may cause the public comment period to be terminated. Copies of our cooperative policies and procedures on public comment and filing complaints are available on the cooperative website.
All right, much appreciated, Graham. Let's see.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. President, I wonder if we should just quickly approve the agenda or any changes we want to make before we do member comment.
Oh, you stole Kohler's thunder there. I wondered why we had two non-public comments coming up there. So you both had the same idea, and I appreciate you keeping me on track. Thank you, Graham, for the preamble. We'll come back to public comment once we approve the agenda. Prepared for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved by Kohler with the change that we add G under number 5, the board action agenda, to discuss the tri-state monitor or a board seat.
Thank you for that, and the potential modification, Kohler. Do we have a second for Kohler's motion? I see Holly. Thank you. So moved and seconded to accept the agenda with the addition of section 5G to discuss tri-state monitoring or tri-state board position. So we'll add that to the agenda. Any other comments on the agenda before we go to vote? Okay, thank you. Then all in favor of approving the agenda, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, or abstentions? Great, we have an agenda. All right, then let's look for hands for public comment. Do we have any? I don't see anything in the waiting room. Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll move past public comment into consent board items. Any questions or clarifications before we have a motion? All right, then I would look for a motion to approve the consent board items.
Kirsten moves.
Thank you, Kirsten. Any seconds? I see Dan Huntington. Thank you very much. Moved and seconded to approve consent board items. Any discussion? I see Kohler's hand.
Yeah, I would like to please pull out the approval of the minutes and
Okay.
also the monthly write-offs.
All right, gotcha. Consent board items, removing the November board meeting minutes and section D, the monthly write-offs. So we'll chase those right after approval. Any other comments? Any other things that we need to remove? Okay, then we'll go to vote. All in favor of approving? Tim, I see your hand up there. Nope, it went away.
Wait a moment. I when you're finished with this, I was anticipatory. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, we'll get the rest of the consent board items presumably approved. So all in favor of approving consent board items, less A and D, the minutes and the monthly write-offs. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that part of the consent board items is approved.
And
I'll let you start us off.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir, Chris.
just quickly, I have just been made aware by staff that we do have one public comment. I don't know if the chair would like to go. I know we passed that item in the agenda, but we do now have someone wishing to make a comment.
Is there anybody on the board that isn't okay with us kind of reversing the agenda here? Raise your hand if you don't want to go back to public comment. All right, we're all on board, so let's go back. I see Mr. Blake in the waiting room there. So Janelle, can you give Mr. Blake the mic?
Hi, this is Brad Blake. I just wanted to encourage the board to go back to public in-person meetings. Several people, including myself, showed up today for the meeting. Also, I was trying to communicate with your website to raise my hand for at least as long as it took you to go through the request for public comment, and it would not work. So I would encourage you to take a look at your website, make it a little more user-friendly. I'm not sure why it wouldn't go through, but it wouldn't go through. Maybe even a spot on your front page for the virtual meetings that says, tap here to go to the board meeting, which I think there is one that says here, but it might be made a little bit clearer. I would like to talk to Dan Harms. Dan, if you could give me a call, I would like to chat with you in regards to a project. I thought you were going to give me a call with some questions that I had for a project.
All right,
That's my comment.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Blake. Thanks for your comments and opportunities for continuous improvement there, and we'll work with staff to look into those concerns that you're raising. Okay, we'll close out member comment at this point, and back into the items that we pulled from the consent board. Kohler, you suggested pulling those, so I'll go ahead and let you have the floor to discuss either or both of those.
Okay, I'll start off with the minutes, and I have it on page 3 of the minutes. And I don't know if my page is updated on the board doc, but I have 4 of 72. And under the attorney update on FERC actions, the 3rd paragraph and the 3rd sentence of that one down, it says a unified approach among the parties, emphasizing the balance sheet methodology. And we don't really define in there what the parties are, but in the paragraph before that, it has United Power, Mountain Parks, and Tri-State. That kind of makes it sound like Tri-State is one of the unified parties, and I don't believe that they are unified on the balance sheet methodology. So I think maybe a little change in that terminology needs to happen. So that's my part right there. And then on the monthly write-offs.
Okay,
And that would be, again, on that one, I have it as page 12 of 72. And about halfway down on the write-offs, there is an account that ends in 516. And about 5 or 6 years ago, the same issue came up where that member was shown to have a write-off. And I can't remember the detail that was behind that. Maybe Dan or Rachel could remember it, but it was not really correct. So I think we need some clarification on that member, because I don't believe that member themselves has a write-off. So those are my 2 items.
okay, thanks, Kohler. Can we, let's see, can staff do some research on that? Can someone kind of put a hand up and say, we'll check in on that particular thing?
Got that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I took a note, so we're ready for that.
Okay. And then let's go back to Kohler's first comment on the minutes. Is everybody okay if we just make a clarification that
So if I would suggest that when it says among the parties, we'll put a parenthetical that says LPEA, United Power, and Mountain Parks.
that accomplish your goal, Kohler? Yeah, thumbs up.
Perfect. Yeah, that's, I think, what needs to happen. So thank you.
Great. Okay, anything else on those 2 items pulled from the consent board? So the minutes and the monthly write-offs. Okay, then we need a motion to approve those 2 items with the modifications made per Kohler.
So moved by Kohler.
Yeah, thank you, Kohler.
Seconded.
Thank you. Was that Nicole? Thank you. All right, moved and seconded to approve consent board items A and D with the discussed modifications. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. We're through consent board items. Moving on to CEO and staff reports. Passing the mic to Mr. Hanson. Thank you.
All right. Great to see everybody this morning. Appreciate the opportunity to provide an update based on the staff work over the last month. And I think just wanted to ask, do we normally put that up on the screen, the PowerPoint? Okay.
Dashboard, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I've got that in front of me as well. And wanted to start with our key performance indicators. Really, the one line to note there is on the BE sales, and you'll see that we're about 2% or so under our target. We think that is mostly due to the lag in EV data. We actually think we are basically on track there, but a little bit under because of the lag in the EV data that we get from the county. So I think functionally all green check marks here, but of course, happy to answer any questions and wanted to let folks know about the EV data for the BE sales. All right, on the next slide, a couple of items that I wanted to highlight. First of all, the cybersecurity tabletop, really successful event. Appreciate Drew and Elizabeth, your hard work on that. And really always trying to get better at cybersecurity and make sure we have no incidents as we did in November. But want to ask Drew and Elizabeth if they have any details they want to provide on that tabletop event.
Yeah, sure. I can. Elizabeth, did you have something? Okay. Yeah, it's always a great experience. You know, Elizabeth's team puts this on, and we started off with this small incident that just kept getting worse and worse, and before you know it, we've kind of got all hands on deck, and every department's got representation, and we're kind of working on coming up with solutions to mitigate the impact on our members and find ways for continuous improvement. And it's always time well spent. So we always get a lot out of it.
All right. Thank you both for that. Elizabeth?
Yeah, we just do tabletops monthly, and this was one in a series, and it was highly successful and well attended. So that's all I'll add.
Okay. Terrific. The other thing from this slide I want to make sure folks were up to date on is our cost of service study. Dan and Patrick in particular are working hard on that. Our target is to have that completed by the end of February. But let me see if Patrick or Dan want to add any detail there.
Yeah, I can add a little detail for you, Chris. We consulted with the prime group who we're contracting with or partnering with on this study that we're pursuing, and we talked about deliverables and what kind of achievable timelines we might be able to feel like were appropriate, and we came up with February, so we are aggressively targeting finishing up by then.
All right. Terrific. Any questions on the cost of service study?
I see Tim.
All right. Great. Tim?
Not necessarily specific to the cost of service study. I mean, I guess one comment on the COSS is that after the day after the FAC meeting, there was a scheduled meeting with the consultant and finance, and from that we were hoping to see a timeline. So if you have a timeline, Patrick, as a result of that, it would be good to maybe share with the FAC, because as we discussed, there's some tightness in the imagined timeline at that point. So, but I also wanted to ask, that is under the heading target, complete 5 major continuous improvement projects. Given that it's the end of this year, is it possible to list those 5 somewhere along the way, and so we can understand what happened during the course of the year? Thank you.
Yeah, Tim, that's a great catch. Yeah, we should have had those 5 down here. So apologies for that. We'll make sure we get that communicated out to the board. Our top 5 from 2024. All right. Any other comments on this slide before we move on to number 4? All right, under keep the lights on, a couple items I wanted to highlight here. The kickoff of the North Animas Valley 46 kV transmission rebuild project. That is on track, and glad to get that kicked off. The other one I wanted to highlight is the progress on our power supply strategy. Dan and his team in particular are working hard to, and with Graham's support, to make sure we get the agreements in place. And we've got the transmission equipment agreement in good shape, and then the PPAs with the Dolores Canyon and the additional project in the pipeline to get 40 megawatts of firm power. But let me turn to Dan and see if there's any detail he'd like to add on those important targets.
No, other than if you drive up north along Highway 550, you'll definitely see the work that's being done up there. They pretty much have all the transmission poles framed. They're getting those installed. Huge augers up there to install a couple of concrete foundations for self-supporting steel structures too. So it's moving along, and we anticipate that once those invoices come in from that, we'll be hitting closer to 80 to 85% maybe of the capital project work completed, which is above our typical. So.
And pictures of that project in today's newspaper too. You don't have to.
Oh, good. I didn't see that.
You can see them in the paper.
Great.
All right. Any questions on this slide? Okay. On slide number 5 on community partnerships. One in particular I want to highlight that I got to attend and see in action was the food drive that IBEW put together for both Durango and Pagosa Springs. So well done to our IBEW members for that great annual project. And the other thing I want to add to this one is really appreciated the board's support in getting me introduced to the community quickly, especially Kohler, including me in some events, and others helping me to get to know other community leaders quickly. So thank you for that. And really excited to continue that work in December. Any further questions on our community partnerships?
Tim.
Yeah, just curious which team garnered the most items for the little filler U. Just curious.
Oh yeah, who knows the winner of the contest?
Team 4, Tim. Your team, our team.
All right, victory.
Thank you, Dan.
I suspect he knew the answer when he asked the question.
Yes, believe that might be a rhetorical question. Well done. Thanks to everyone for your participation in that. And of course, we're kicking off the Giving Tree program as well. So hope everybody can participate in that this year. All right, let's move on then to slide 6 with our finance report. And I know Patrick had sent out with the updated board material this morning, kind of the latest numbers with the calendaring of this particular board meeting. We had kind of a tight turnaround with some of our financial data, but let me turn to Patrick to summarize that for us.
Morning, everyone. We did obtain financials for November at 6 a.m. this morning, so we sent as soon as we were able. Generally, we had a pretty good performance for the month of November. We had budgeted operating margins of positive 380,000, and we came in around 340,000. Top line revenue saw a bit of a recovery. We had 3% improvement in residential sales. Small commercial was better than budget by 1%, and large industrial was off by 6%, which resulted in just about flat revenue performance. Cost of power was better than budget, so gross margins were better than budget by approximately $100,000. Controllable expenses, we were worse than budget by about 250,000. That's primarily driven by tree trimming expenses, and that was timing variance that we talked about throughout the course of the year. We also had unbudgeted expense from engaging with a recruiter to help us establish a key executive position. So that was an unbudgeted expense for 2024. So those were the primary expense drivers. The other thing I would highlight on the expense side of the equation is medical expenses for our medical benefits program are pacing higher. That is causing some pressure on the labor budget as well. But all in all, as we move towards year end, we put an eye on how operating margins are performing, and we are currently at 3.2% for year to date, which leaves December ahead of us. But I feel good about where we're looking for finishing year end just on first glance and what we're expecting. I would say one thing to note is on our financial metrics, we are at 9% of target cash reserves, and that is primarily due to capital spending. We've been efficient on capital project management, and so that's outpaced some of that expectation for cash. So we're still under on that key performance indicator, but it's something we're going to keep an eye on. We'll look at what capital spending looks like for the remainder of December, and we've been having some robust conversations about that metric in the Finance and Audit Committee meeting and how we move forward, understanding that, and how we tactically hit those cash targets for both our upcoming credit rating process and also just general best practice. So pleased with November as a whole, and we're seeing some of that timing variance that we talked about from the beginning of the year, where we were running somewhere around between 8% operating margin percentages. We knew that a lot of that was timing variance. This is what we expected, so we seem on target to hit our budgeted goal. Any questions for me? And I know you haven't had a long time to digest them, so I apologize for the late delivery, but that with the 11th, that's a tougher win to achieve.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Questions on the financial report? All right, not seeing any hands up. Thanks, Patrick, of course, for you and your team's efforts to turn that around quickly. I know it was a tight timeline, so thank you. All right, let's go ahead and move on then to the next slide, preparing for the future. And the one that I definitely wanted to highlight here is right in the middle of the page, which is our grant proposal to DOLA on Community Resilience Program. Great job to Dan and his team for getting this in a good spot. Dan, do you want to provide some extra detail there?
Yeah, real exciting. And you never know what conference you attend that might put a ball in motion. But yeah, Dominic went to a particular conference where he crossed paths with a battery vendor, started making contacts at DOLA. And, one thing led to another. We were very encouraged to even, encouraged by DOLA to submit the idea that we had, working with them very closely, feel pretty good about this. And it's a model that both United and Poudre Valley have used as well. So excited about the prospect of this. This would result in a energy storage system right next to our Shenandoah substation on our property that checks a lot of boxes, including the addressing one of the red zones that we have going forward. So just super excited about this, and we'll find out probably, I think it was early Q2 of 25 when we hear about the results of this.
And we'll try to get as much state money as we possibly can in 2025. So, and you can see on the side of this graph some of the other ones that are in motion that we're also pursuing. So, Kohler, do you have a question?
Yeah, on that, it mentions a microgrid. So is there other features besides storage in that, Dan, that is going to be included, like maybe generation or something?
Well, the battery,
they have generators to back up.
Yeah, and so everybody's got a slightly different definition of a microgrid, and whether it's a microgrid that can run sustainably in perpetuity or not is one of those question marks. This would be have microgrid features that basically can carry certain segments of that substation for a period of time. Right now, the battery is the generator. It would store the kilowatt hours, be able to provide those back in with enough energy storage behind that can also recharge the battery and extend the life and kilowatt hours provided from that situation. But having it operate as a microgrid is an added cost to the project. And so phase one, get the battery there, leverage it for its storage capabilities. Phase two, start to looking at forming the actual microgrid, possibly with another grant.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, great question. Any other questions on slide 7? All right. Yeah, Tim.
So on that same project, Dan, I know we've had members indicate that that's a sort of solar limited, area, isn't it? Would this help that red line?
Absolutely. Yeah, that would eliminate that problem there.
Excellent. That'd be really great. Thanks.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm seeing kind of all across the industry is the kind of multi-value streams from storage operationally, and the obvious one, which is being able to shift some of those daytime solar kilowatt hours to when you need them most and during evening peaks. But lots of great value streams there as we add storage. Also noticed headline today, this morning as I was prepping for this meeting, that battery costs are 20% lower over the last 12 months. So the trajectory here is really positive for these options as we go into 2025. All right, any other questions on this slide? All right, I think that brings us to the end of our staff readout in this part of the agenda. So back to you, Mr. President. Oh, I see Kohler's hand just went up.
Yep.
And this just had to deal with prepare for the future, but I was driving town the other day and I heard on the radio that Colorado was the #1 state for EV sales. And I thought, and they said it was 1 out of 4. So I did Google it. And what came up is that electric vehicles made up 25.3% of new vehicles sold in Colorado in the third quarter. The radio didn't mention that, but the third quarter. and we're actually ahead of California, which was at 24.3%. I found that really surprising. I didn't realize it was taken off quite that much. So I thought I'd just bring that up.
Yeah, I saw that headline too. That's a great one to bring up. I do think there's some end of 2024 consumer behavior here, and we'll probably see it in Q4 as well with some of the potential uncertainty on EV incentives. So thanks for bringing that up, Kohler.
All right. Anything else for staff reports, questions for staff before we move on to section 5 of the agenda, the board action? Okay, thank you very much. So into board action, first item under that is update from Finance and Audit Committee. What do you have for us, Director Wheeler?
Wow, we're here already, huh? Okay.
I know. and you're always and you know, I mean, in the last few meetings you had a very large section under Finance and Audit Committee, but I think you just have an update for us this time.
Actually, there's a little more than just an update. So, yeah, we didn't have an opportunity to look at the financials until this morning, so that did help our timeline in the committee a bit. All understandable because of the early nature of the meeting this month. We also looked at the excess collection from the anticipated rate increase of Tri-State that did not occur until like August rather than January as we had anticipated. And we discussed that, and also what action needed to be taken when. And essentially, there's a pressing need to make a decision around this this year, before the end of the year, and this is the last board meeting, so we have a recommendation from the FAC. And a little background on that is that our 2024 budget anticipated the collection of this, and so the excess revenue in the 2024 budget and actual against that budget shows that we have collected 2.648 million in revenue, sort of as a part of that budget, but no cost associated with that. So it flows primarily to the operating margin line directly, not a lot of difference between that. And so the question is, you know, how should that be utilized? And the FAC pretty unanimously felt that it should be utilized in a way in which members who have paid that in 2024 see some benefit in the next year or two. And so previously in the year, we had made a recommendation that be treated as a LIFO payment in 2025, and the board did not approve that. So we felt that was a signal that we should consider the utilization in a more maybe conservative or prudent manner and retain that as the strategic, what do you call it, reserve fund, right? So such that we could use it, the rate stabilization fund, I always trip over that. And and that could be used, for example, if because of our cost of service study timing, we have to delay the rate increase anticipated for April, we could utilize this as a way to still meet budget without having to increase the rate to catch it up during the course of the year if it were delayed. And we could also use it even into 2026 if we needed to cushion any other rate impact. So that's our recommendation. The vote from the FAC is unanimously to recommend that the board approve maintaining the approved 2024 budget and allocate 2.648 million to the rate stabilization fund. So I'll pause there and see if anyone has questions, if I lost anybody along the way there, or have questions of me or Patrick. Or
yeah, so that's as a recommendation from the FAC. We don't need a motion or a second on that. So at this point we're open for discussion, preceding a vote on that recommendation.
That's right. Thanks.
Yeah, Nicole.
Nicole?
Yeah, I think I appreciate the recommendation. I think it's a good use of funds to put in the rate stabilization fund. And then I was curious when I looked at that flow chart Patrick made, it said anything over any operating margins over 2.5% can go into rate stabilization. And then I believe you were saying that we are at about 3.2% for this year. And so I was curious what the process is. At what point do we decide what to do with that delta? With this, so I know it's not totally related to this, but it is still, I think, considering funds into rate stabilization for the year.
That'll come post. Oh, sorry, Tim. You
No, go ahead, Patrick.
I was going to say that's going to come post year end, and when we actually make our vote to allocate patronage capital, we'll make that decision at that point of the game once we have a solid understanding of what we believe margins are. That will be pre-audit finalization, but we should be wrapped up by then. We don't foresee any adjusting entries, but there is that nuance to it, Cole.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions? So I guess all in favor, raise your hand. Say aye.
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 Did we catch everyone? Any objection? Any abstention? I see a hand. Rachel's abstaining.
I'm abstaining.
All right. Looks like it passed. Anything else in here? I think the report itself explains the rest of things fairly well. I think there's still some question on the timing, as we talked about earlier, for cost of service study. Hopefully we'll nail that down and have a timeline for the board to consider. That could entail a cow or something like that along the way here to utilize that to come up with any rate changes or the rate changes necessary by class to affect the rate increase in the budget. All right, any other questions on the report? All right, thank you. Back to you, Ted.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tim. Okay, next item on the agenda is Committee on Policies update. I'll turn it over to Nicole.
Sure. So the report's in your packet. Just to hit the highlights, we didn't meet in November. We are going to do a kind of a double meeting on Monday the 16th from 9 to 11. We do still have time to add any sidebar comments to the Policy 103. So the links there in that report. We are going to get that presentation on the Energy Risk Management Committee that was introduced to the FACT and has now been reviewed by an outside consultant. So we're interested to hear what Patrick says, what they advise in terms of where and how that should be formed. And then we are going to, thank you to Kirsten, she brought up the AI usage policy that other co-ops are considering. So we're going to start the discussion at a pretty high level at the meeting on Monday. Any questions? Okay, back to you, Ted.
All right, thank you very much, Nicole. Moving along, item C is reappointment of Roundup Foundation directors. Let's see here.
And I could probably take this for
thank
you,
you,
Ted.
Gary.
So
Appreciate it.
I believe we sent out a memo on this. Basically, Roundup Foundation Board is appointed by the LPEA board upon recommendation by the individual district directors of the district they reside in. We have two sitting members, Leonard Martinez from District 1 and Jillian Barkley from District 4, who are up for reappointment by the Roundup bylaws. Directors are allowed to serve 2 consecutive terms and then they're term limited. So this would be the second term for both of these members. Also, as sort of a background on this, when I brought this out to the individual district directors to seek their recommendation, Tim Wheeler suggested we try to put together a flow chart about sort of how these appointment processes work. So Carrie Hugus and I are working on trying to get that flow chart put together and hope to have that for the whole board in a few weeks. We'll just sort of push that out informally to everyone, just as a informational on what this appointment and reappointment process looks like. But if suppose if we go numerically, perhaps if the District 1 directors are in a position to renominate Mr. Martinez. Is that correct?
I renominate Leonard Martinez.
Do we have consensus from the District 1 directors? I see
Yep.
Paul nodding her head, thumbs up from Nicole. So I think we can proceed to a vote on Mr. Martinez. All in favor of reappointing Mr. Martinez, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Mr. Martinez is reappointed. So gets similar action from the District 4 directors on Ms. Barkley. Are all District 4 directors in favor of renominating Ms. Barkley?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Yeah, me too.
And John? Yes, all right. All right, so Ms. Barkley has been renominated by the District 4 directors. All in favor of reappointing Ms. Barkley, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate the work that District 1 and 4 directors did ahead of time on that. Thank you for your time.
Yep, good job. Let's see, on to item D, CREA and Western United annual meetings. We have posted the agenda.
Hey, Ted, having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Same.
darn. Okay. I don't know what's going wrong technically, but I'll just speak louder. Does that seem okay now?
Helps.
Little
Okay.
better.
All right. Yeah, I'll just speak loudly and deal with the technical later. Let's see. What Graham, are you in a position to help out here to explain what we're trying to accomplish with
Yep.
The appointments here?
So these meetings will be in early February. By appointing them now, we'll be able to sort of get travel plans, typically, with enough lead time to reduce expenses, right? These are attendances that LPEA pays the expenses for, as opposed to other ones where it's included in our membership. So the idea of getting this out relatively early is, get people on their calendars, right? You don't want to sort of at the last minute say, well, we need somebody to go here in 2 weeks and that people are already booked. But also to sort of get flights and hotel and et cetera booked ahead of time. So February 8th to 11th is when these will occur. I think we've often sent somebody different than our sitting director, right? So if Director Metzler sits on the CREA board, and so she'll be attending in that capacity, and Director Lucian attends and is the Western United board. He attends in that capacity, but to save money, we can often send them as the other one's alternative. So Director Metzler would be the representative to the Western United annual meeting, and Director Lucian would be the representative to the CREA annual meeting, and that way we're sort of reducing duplicative travel costs.
Right. Thanks for the history and the background. Are we ready for nominations for those positions? I see Tim, your hand.
Yeah, so I'll nominate Holly Metzler, Director Metzler, as the WUE delegate, and I'll nominate David Lucian as the CREA delegate, if they so accept.
I accept.
And I see Director Metzler thumbs up, so both accepted the nomination. Do we have any additional nominations?
Need a second?
I think as a nomination, we could probably proceed unless there's any additional nominations, and if there aren't any additional nominations, we can move to consensus by acclamation. Dan Huntington? Oh, you're muted.
I'd like to nominate Kohler McGinnis for the CREA delegate, alternate for Western United.
That's a good point, right? We might want to sort of have some alternates, I suppose. Janelle, can you sort of speak to that? Do we have a space for identifying alternates for these? I know this sort of involves a piece of paperwork that, we kind of need to fill out. I was wondering if the paperwork.
Sorry, Graham, can you hear me?
I can now, yeah. Nope. I could for a second.
Graham, can you hear me?
Now I can.
I don't know what was going on. Didn't touch anything, but yes, we have the space.
Okay, so that's good. So we should, so Dan, just to clarify, are you nominating Kohler to be the alternate for both positions, or for him to be the primary? Just want to kind of clarify what the nomination is for.
Primary for CREA and alternate for Western United.
Kohler, do you accept those nominations?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so let's if I'm not totally clear on where we stand on and maybe we can't split it apart, but where do we stand on nominate? Let's just try and split it apart. For CREA, we have most recently Dan Huntington nominated Kohler as the primary delegate for CREA and the alternate for Western United. But previously Tim had nominated, and I thought, and maybe I heard this incorrectly, I thought Tim nominated Director Lucian for primary for CREA.
Yeah, this is what I have right now. For Western United, we have one nominee of Director Metzler for the primary and a nominee for Director McGinnis for the alternate. And so if we don't have any additional nominations, we could probably close that out with a acclamation vote.
Okay, thank you for that, Graham. Any other nominations for Western United then? Okay, then yeah, all in favor of Director Metzler as the primary and Director McGinnis as the alternate, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Procedurally, do we need to go any farther than that?
No, I didn't see any. I mean, probably just because of the Zoom nature, and it's hard to count, we should probably just for sure say.
Okay, is anyone opposed to those nominations? Okay,
Yeah.
or abstentions, just to record it.
It looked unanimous.
Holly,
Holly, you're abstaining.
Okay.
So
fair enough. Thank you.
Unanimous with one abstention.
Okay, so that one's solved. And now, so we have two nominations for the CREA representative. Director McGinnis and Director Lucian. As we have done, I think we should go ahead and hear from both nominated candidates. Why do you want to do it? What are you going to bring to it? Why should we vote for you? I'll let David, you were nominated first. Are you in a position to speak to that? He may not be. Kohler, we'll pass the mic over to you.
And I have to say that I'm kind of caught off guard with this, so I don't really have much to say.
Sure.
I have done this in the past. I don't know, because I haven't researched it. I don't know what's coming forward at that board meeting. I don't think there's any big topics, but I don't know. That's really all I can say right now. I'm more than happy to do it, and if I don't, that's fine too. It's not a big push to be in that position. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Appreciate it, Kohler. I mean, I'm sure we're all confident that you could get up to speed before it happens if there is anything. A little bit of clarification. If we send Kohler to this, is Director Lucian already attending in a Western United capacity? I see Tim. I see several people shaking their heads. Okay, so yeah, I mean, just consider that as we vote on it. Tim, what do you have comments on the? You want to add anything to it?
Yeah, I part of the reason I nominated David was because he had been a stand-in for Holly at CREA this year. So he's, this year there's some familiarity by David with CREA and other issues. And I just thought, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. Plus it's the cost savings. And as Finance Audit Committee member, I like cost savings. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to speak up for that because we haven't heard from David and my reasoning. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Holly,
Yeah.
Let me jump in and let David speak.
Yeah, I'm available to speak. Yeah, I would enjoy going. I did go last year, learned a lot, interfacing with our CREA colleagues, plus reinforcing the networking with the WUE and learning more about the industry. So I'd be happy to go. And if not, that's fine too. But appreciate the vote, Tim. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, David. Comments from Holly?
Yeah, somewhat related to this was I thought it was kind of valuable to have some of our other board members come because there is a legislative conference at the end of this, and just having some of the other board members also, provided a whole lot of value in my opinion. So that's just an observation, I guess. I'm really torn because I think Kohler and David both provide really good stuff and could bring really good stuff to the table. Thank you both for consideration.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. It's actually a good thing to be torn. So, Kirsten, some additional comments.
Yeah, Holly and everybody, we can still go and not be the representative. So it'll be on my travel plans for next month.
Great. Any other comments before we proceed to a vote?
Just say kind of procedurally that our officer positions are secret ballot by bylaw, but anything else would be an open vote. If people would feel more comfortable voting by secret ballot, we could have a motion to make this vote by secret ballot, and we could everybody text message me kind of like we did with our officer votes a couple months ago. But if people feel comfortable voting openly, there's no obligation to vote this as secret ballot.
Yeah, thanks for that, Graham. So yeah, if I would entertain a motion, if anybody wants to make that motion, as Graham suggested, for secret ballot. If we don't have that, we'll go ahead and proceed with a public vote.
And as it stands right now, this is just for the primary delegate, and that we would need to sort of come back to picking an alternate after this vote.
Fair enough. Okay, so between the two candidates, Director McGinnis, Director Lucian, So we'll start with Kohler. All in favor of Kohler being the
CREA annual meeting
CRE
delegate.
rep. So yeah, all in favor of Kohler for that position, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
I'm going to ask you to keep your hands up for
Yeah, we need to count.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I get
I thought I saw
it might be
6.
better for us to do kind of a quick roll call on this just to make sure I get it right. So I'm gonna go through District 1. Director Skihan was
Yes for Kohler.
yes. Director Pitcher, I believe, was a yes. I saw your hand. Director Metzler, I didn't see your vote.
Like I said, this is a really tough one. I think they bring both, but I will vote for David right now.
Okay. So moving to District 2, Director Huntington, for your vote.
Kohler.
Kohler. Okay. Director Lee.
Kohler.
Okay. Director McGinnis. Oh, sorry. There you go.
I'll abstain.
Abstain. All right. District 3, Director Landis.
Sorry, trying to make the mic work. I'll go with Kohler.
Okay. Director Compton.
David.
Okay. District 4, Director Lucian. Oh. He's sort of frozen. Perhaps Director Wheeler, you're unmuted. Can I get your vote?
Yeah, for Director Lucian.
Okay. And Director Witchell?
David.
And so Director, oh, and we seem to have lost Director Lucian. So without Director Lucian's vote as of now, it's Director McGinnis with 5, Director Lucian with 4. So I suppose if I don't know how long we want to wait for Director Lucian to come back and tell us what his vote. There he comes.
Give him a second.
Yep, there he is.
Yeah, I'll abstain.
He's abstained. All right. So so Director McGinnis is elected 5-4.
Right. Thanks, everybody. And so we do need to get an alternate for CREA then. And did we have a nomination previously? I think Tim's original nominations included an alternate for CREA. No? Okay. Nicole?
I'd like to recommend David as the alternate.
All right. David, do you accept that nomination? Sorry, we're making
Yes,
David
I do. Yes, I do.
Okay. He accepted. Okay. Any other nominations for that position? All right, then we'll move forward to a vote on that. All in favor of David Lucian as the alternate for the CREA?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Give you a second. Any abstentions? Great. Okay. David is the alternate, and we have those positions set. All right. Thanks, everybody. A little bit technically challenging, but thank you for the good conversation about that and getting those positions filled a little bit ahead of time. Thanks for the directors who brought that up, that we should get that done ahead of time because we'll enjoy some cost savings with that. Let's see, moving on to Section E, Election Supervisory Committee members. I think as Graham pointed out early on, we're looking for replacing ESC members in districts. What are they, Graham?
3 and 4, we have resigning directors that we have vacancies that we need to fill. So districts 1 and 2, we have some long tenured election supervisory committee members that have expressed an interest in being reappointed. There is no term limit to number of reappointments under our policies, and staff would highly recommend reappointing Mason Carpenter in District 1 and Cheryl Ayers in District 2. They bring a lot of experience and confidence in the community to their election oversight. And they also would have good familiarity with using survey and ballot systems, the transition that we had this year from the Tiffany Lee, the La Plata County clerk, to survey and ballot systems. So recommend, and I think if we are comfortable with that, we can proceed to reappointing them as one action item.
All right, so do we need that nomination from the directors?
Yes, if one of the District 1 directors could renominate Mr. Carpenter, and one of the District 2 directors could renominate Ms. Ayers.
I will nominate Cheryl Ayers for District 2.
Yep.
And I'll nominate Mr. Carpenter for District 1.
I think we can proceed to a vote on that.
Okay.
Unless there's any discussion.
Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and vote on both of those nominations since there aren't secondary nominations. All in favor of those two nominations for Election Supervisory Committee, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed to that? Or abstentions? Okay, well done. We have 2 of the positions filled.
And then I'll give a brief public update on the other 2 vacancies. We had members of the Election Supervisory Committee in Districts 3 and 4 that resigned, and we need to find new candidates for that. Typically, we go to La Plata County Clerk Tiffany Lee for recommendations on that, because our policies require someone with general election experience. Tiffany came up with a couple of names. One of the names for District 4 circulated to the District 4 directors, and I believe Director Wheeler was able to make contact with the candidate, and they weren't perhaps as enthusiastic about that as we might have thought. So we're going to go back and get a few more nominations. I'll get that circulated to the District 4 directors to sort of make contact with the people before they need to make any sort of nomination. And believe I gave some information on the District 3 directors as well. I believe Director Landis was maybe going to try and make something happen, but I don't know if she had the time to do that or not. I don't know what the status is on that.
I am working on that. I thought today. Sorry, I got my weeks mixed up.
Sure, absolutely. So appreciate the individual district directors in the districts with vacancies taking the time to reach out to the candidates and coordinate with them. And I will go continue to work with you in between now and the next meeting to kind of work towards getting available nominees that the district directors can bring forward under the policy and that the entire board can vote on. Director Wheeler.
Thank you. Yeah. What would be helpful is to understand first the timeline. When do we need to make these appointments by in order to have a good election?
So we have, our policy requires the nominations to be 4 months ahead of the election and the appointments to occur 2 months before the election. So we are about what are we, 5 months out, Amanda?
Yep.
Yeah. So we have a little bit of time to meet that, but of course, if for some sort of unforeseen circumstances, we've had in the past, people resign in the middle of the election cycle that we've needed to reappoint. I mean, we do our best to keep the election supervisory committee fully staffed. Part of what we're doing this year, you know, the policies say they serve 1-year terms, so we're sort of shooting to kind of get them reappointed in about the similar cycle to where they were last year, which is Q1 of 2025. That said, you know, with our election rescheduling issues that we had last year, and we've been doing a lot of this, right? We were initially getting ready for an election in the spring of last year. We had to move that to the fall. Now we're back to spring. So it is sort of compressed in workload, and we've had the incumbent directors or the incumbent committee members do some work to sort of help us get ready for our upcoming spring election and some date and notice review. They've already performed some of that stuff for us because they sort of sit until reappointed with their 1-year terms.
You know, one of the questions this potential candidate had was around, you know, workload, time frame of that workload, nature of the workload. The discussion he had with the county clerk was not very informative of that, understandably. And given that we're directors that are appointing an independent commission, I don't think we as directors really know that either, right? So having, you know, a summary of that kind of information, you know, what's involved in this, what's the time commitment or other commitment, you know, it's not quite the same as being an election judge at the county clerk's office. I don't think it's a different role and task. And so I think it'd be nice to have that kind of information when we talk to the candidates so that we can, and any kind of qualification, right? So other than you're just a member of District X. So if there's some of that information, that might be helpful when Director Landis talks to the D3 nominee, or when we get another nominee for D4, would also be helpful. Thank you.
Yes, no, that's good. We'll get some talking points to the district directors in 3 and 4 to sort of help them. And if you have any specific questions too, I'll get you some generalized talking points, but if you have any specific questions, you can also always refer any of them to me, and I can sort of talk them through in more detail as well.
I mean, to be honest, this person was concerned they knew nothing about electricity or utilities, and I was like, I don't think that's the nature. It's more like, how familiar are you with, you know, an election and those processes. So I mean, you know, I think there was a concern there that they didn't know enough about the utility industry. So anyway,
good. That's good to know. So
yeah, and I think I appreciate that. That's a good kind of specific ask, Tim. And I think it's easy to overlook some of these things when we're sort of almost cold calling somebody to serve in these positions. I know that several of these questions were asked and answered to Rachel in an email. So some of that's already put together, Graham. That's easy to recirculate. But I think like Tim's additional questions, and certainly Rachel, if there's you know, additional questions on top of what you already got answered from Graham, this would be the time to iterate that you know, in the next few days and get that as tight as we can get it, so we can go back out and do this search in a good way. Great. Thanks for the update. Thanks for getting half of that work accomplished today. Let's see, almost exactly on schedule. I'm going to be the nice guy here and give everybody 3 extra minutes of break. And Graham, I assume that we do have attorney update in public session.
Janelle, have we coordinated with Matt?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's everybody take a quick break, stretch your legs.
Do we have G?
Oh yeah, that's right. We do have Well, yeah, we do have online voting for next year, and also the tri-state board members. But I suppose if we want to, it's been a while, if we want to take a break and sort of move those until after the executive session, probably entertain a quick motion on that.
Yeah, sorry, I really stumbled over the agenda there. Is anybody opposed to moving F and G until after executive session? Okay, I see no opposition to that, Graham. Let's go ahead and do that. So we'll take our break, come back at 10:25 for attorney update, and like I said, we'll move F and G until after executive session. Thanks. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Give everyone a few minutes to roll in. And we'll see if we can get Matt on the line. I see Matt. Hello.
Morning.
Yeah, let's give everybody just a second here.
Sure.
Okay, we're back on. Agenda item number 6, attorney update. Give us what you got, Matt.
All right. Good morning. So a few things going across. We'll start with what's going on 10th Circuit on the CTP appeal. Then we'll go to FERC for 3 different items. So on the CTP appeal front, next big deadline is FERC's brief is due January 27, 2025. At that point, we'll be on the clock for 21 days to February 17. And that's going to be a joint brief with us and United and Mountain Parks supporting FERC against the tri-state appeal. So, that one, continues to kind of work its way through the process, but nothing major coming up between now and the next board meeting. Moving over to the FERC side, the sleeving administrative fee associated with the PPAs remains in settlement. The next big thing coming up there is a settlement conference, January 23rd, 2025. So again, kind of on pause for the moment. Some conversations going on, but that's about it. We can talk about that more in executive session if that's helpful. And then with respect to the rate case, there's a 2-day settlement conference at FERC starting tomorrow, going to Friday. So that's sort of where that case sits. I expect that to be one of several, but we can certainly chat about where we sit in all of that in executive session. And then the only other, I think, key update is FERC did issue an order on the request for rehearing from Tri-State's compliance filing on the CTP. There's a few things in there that we're working through. I think the biggest thing that Tri-State got dinged on that's relevant for this group is with respect to the transmission crediting. The FERC found that Tri-State did not comply with the order in terms of the way that it set up the transmission credit that would come back to withdrawing members. Tri-State's been directed to make another compliance filing. Following FERC's directives, FERC was pretty critical of Tri-State in that order. So that's really the biggest item out of that. And we're working through some other kind of cats and dogs that are in that order. And that just issued very late last week. So unless there's other questions, we can jump over to the executive session, but that's kind of the update across the courts and FERC.
anything that people want to ask from Matt while we're still in public session? I'm not seeing anything. So then we need a motion to go into executive session. We have 2 items to discuss: continuation of the attorney update and also power supply progress. So Tim.
So I move we go into executive session for the 2 agenda items.
All right, moved by Tim.
Rachel seconds.
Thank you, Rachel. Moved and seconded to go into executive session for the 2 agenda items on the agenda. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Or abstentions? Okay, then we'll move into executive session. Everybody move over there. See you on the other side.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so we're back in public session. Welcome back. We won't have any actions coming out of that executive session. As was indicated before we went in, we left off 2 agenda items from item 5, board action. So we're looping back up to letter F, annual meeting online voting. So let's see. Graham, do you mind walking us through that?
Yep, no problem. So I'll refer primarily to my memo in the board packet, but a couple of years ago, the General Assembly allowed cooperatives to adopt provisions to allow electronic voting. Then we subsequently had our members amend our bylaws to allow the board to adopt electronic voting if it so chose. So we've packaged it together with some indicative costs and also with some experiences of voter increased turnout that other co-ops have experienced by moving to what is a hybrid system. There will still be paper ballots. There will still be in-person ballot voting at the annual meeting. This is just an additional secure online method of voting for our members.
Great. Okay. Let's see. We have a resolution proposed in the agenda or in the board packet. So we probably should start off with the motion. I'll recognize Kohler with his hand up.
Well, I'll go ahead and make the motion because I do want to add some discussion, please.
Perfect.
Second.
So the motion, just so we're clear, is move to approve resolution 2024-16, authorization of electronic ballots for the 2025 election and annual meeting.
Is that what you expected, Kohler and Tim?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So then open for discussion, and Kohler, you go first.
So I wouldn't vote in favor of this right now because I don't feel like I've looked under the hood to see what exactly happens with this. And I think it would be a big concern of a lot of our members. I do have a list of questions, and I would like to either share it now, or it might be better to put it in an email and maybe table this until next month so everybody can look at and add to the questions and find out. And if I were to ask to vote on it now, I'd either vote no or to abstain, just because I just don't feel comfortable with some of the detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Kohler. I think that brings up a question of I guess timing slash urgency here. Are we in a go no go position, Graham?
Amanda might be in a better position to address that.
We would need to make this decision by January in order to have it implemented ahead of the ballot opening in April.
Okay, and any other, Amanda, any other, I guess, challenges with moving this decision to January?
No.
Okay, so we do have that option to continue to consider this. If you know, based on that, and we'll obviously get through the rest of the comments, but if that's true, well, that is true. We've been clarified that that's true. Kohler, it may make the most sense to do the questions via email, and everybody can tag on to those over the next, you know, I guess essentially 4 weeks. So yeah, but let's go through
I'm
the
more
rest
than happy to do it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. But motion is still in effect. Kirsten, discussion?
Yeah, before we table it, I share Kohler's concerns about having some questions. I am mostly in favor of anytime we're able to give our members more agency and make it easier for them to vote in a secure way. But let's just flesh this one out a little bit more, please.
Thanks, Kirsten. Rachel, you're next.
I was just going to ask for an example of the type of questions folks have, but I'm now hearing 2 people want to pause it. So I guess Kohler or Kirsten, if you're willing to give an example of a question that you've got lingering out there.
I can read mine off real quick if you would like. I'll leave that up to Ted.
I don't have a problem with that. I think that sounds great. Let's maybe not commit to digging in and answering all the questions, but at least having some initial familiarity with what that line of questioning is. I think that's time well spent. So go ahead, Kohler, you have the floor.
Okay, so my first one is, does a member select a method, paper or electronic, before the ballots are mailed out? If yes, is there a savings on the cost from survey and ballot systems? If no, can this be incorporated in the future? And I think about other, you know, I have ownership of stock, and when I vote at their annual meeting, I get electronic, and I don't get the paper one, but that's a choice. What is the procedure for securing that member cannot vote both ways, voting twice? How many co-ops does survey and ballot systems facilitate? They mentioned that 70% of their clients do electronic voting, but it doesn't have many clients. So that, you know, I'd like to kind of know that. At what time does electronic voting become active as compared to the timetable for the ballots being mailed out? What is the role for the election supervisory committee, and how will they be trained or given the status on it? Does LPEA have references from other participating co-ops, both the positives and negatives? So those are the questions I have.
I think we can answer all of those pretty efficiently. So yeah, it's not going to answer them right here and right now, I think, but we can get those turned around. I think we're pretty familiar with.
And my questions, Rachel, are mostly around what are our members' thoughts on online voting. I don't want to feel like we're jamming something down folks' throats. And I don't know, I don't recall if we've asked about that in the past. We certainly may have, and I just need to be reminded. Thank you.
Yeah, Graham, you might be able to comment on that, right? I mean, this was a bylaw change.
Yeah, I mean, the majority that voted supported the bylaw change to allow us to have this. I can go back and find just exactly what the breakdown was of that, but the ultimately because of the nature of our bylaws, we needed to take this option to the membership and they approved it. So that is probably the best data point that I have, and I can get you the total I mean, it would be hard, right? Because it was an integrated bylaw change that had multiple things. It wasn't just sort of a single question. Do you want electronic balloting? Yes or no? But the bylaw change carried probably in the ratio of 2 to 1 or so in my recollection.
Yeah, and it was kind of a blanket, let's bring everything up to date with the law.
Yeah.
So I don't know that people were answering that question.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we can get that question answered, and we just might have to get out there and check out with our own members as directors and see what they're thinking.
Pass the mic over to Dan Huntington.
Yeah, I'm kind of like Tim. I feel like Tim in the last session. This got sprung on us with no prior knowledge that it was coming. And I have a lot of questions. And as far as electronic voting, the meeting I went to at Oxford, a lot of my comments was why people are not getting notified by mail or something else, because they're electronically challenged or don't have the capability of doing online information. And one of them was really upset about not having Country Life, because that was their line of communication with the Party Electric in their monthly magazine, the newsletter we put out. So I don't know if we've got bill stuffers or what, but my vote's a no on this for right now until we get questions answered. So I move to table this till next month.
Okay, so we have a motion to table until next month. Is there a second for that motion? I see Kohler, I see Jones. So yeah, second by Kohler. Moved and seconded to table. Graham, help me out with procedure. Do we discuss that or we go straight to vote?
I think we just go straight to vote.
Okay. And is there is this a
it's just a simple majority.
Simple majority is what we're looking for here. Okay, so no discussion. We have a motion and a second to table this this resolution until January board meeting. So all in favor of tabling, say aye, raise your hand, and please keep them up. We'll count here.
1, 2, 3.
I think we're taking the
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I have 8 in favor of tabling.
Thank you. Then all opposed to tabling.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Okay. Abstentions. All right. Well, oh no, we're not missing one because
no, 8. Yeah, we have one absent. So
okay. So motion to table passes. So we'll bring this back in January. I appreciate Kohler, your questions. Please get those in email. And anybody else, you know, who has questions or how do we need to move forward to make a well-informed, not sprung upon us decision in January.
I'd say probably the most efficient way to do this is have Kohler send his questions in an email to the entire board, Chris, Amanda, and me, and then other directors can enter into that chain. I know Director Skihan has some questions and things like that. So we'll sort of use that as the thread, but we'll have Kohler send the initial thread to those parties.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to verify, we have to make a decision in January, right? Otherwise we lose the window.
Correct.
And it's already budgeted, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and it just to be clear, you saw the memo on that, right? What the dollar values were. Okay.
Ted, you put yourself on mute. We didn't catch that.
Yeah, you can't hear me very well when I'm not on mute, and even worse, I guess, when I'm on mute. All right. No, that just moves us past item F onto added item G under board action, which is discussion and possible action on having a tri-state monitoring position. So I think everyone was copied in on that discussion. So the idea here would be to entertain a motion to have a person serve as tri-state monitor with the description that we passed around, that I passed around previously, and then also with the possibility of making that position turn into the full-time the tri-state board position once we're able to do that, because we have a settlement on the La Plata County lawsuit. Anybody care to make a motion to open that discussion up?
I'd like to move for part of that. I'd like to move that we appoint a tri-state monitor. I'm keeping that one separate because I think we should appoint a rep if and when that time comes.
Okay, and Kirsten, would you, if you would, please maybe clarify that a little bit? I understand what you mean by separating the monitoring position from the actual tri-state board position, but I guess does it make sense that we reference the duties described in the email that I circulated?
Oh yes. So I move that we appoint a tri-state monitor with the duties and the budget, which was $240 a month. Period.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion on this topic. Go ahead, Kohler.
So I'm really not in favor of the monitor, just because I think we get a lot of information from Tri-State through the current, the board meeting report after each board meeting. And once a week I get a G&T headlines from Lee Bowie. I think the staff also has staff-to-staff meetings, and the CEO can join the manager's meeting. I am very much in favor of filling that seat on their board. So, I mean, when we were talking about kind of converting this over, then I could vote for the monitor, just knowing it's a very temporary thing. But not having that other part, I guess I'd vote against it.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Yeah, I think the monitor has brought us value. I mean, it's been an unofficial monitoring just because whatever board director has been able to attend has attended. So we were able to get more details about the rate, what happens to the rate after it has to be corrected. I forget the name of it. We were able to do that. We got early word about them being down, that Mr. Hiley was going to be down at the Farm Bureau, and that was passed on to the operations staff since it was an operational person coming down. So that was passed on. We find stuff out. We found out that, and I don't think this is in their board report, that Tri-State has stopped all AI, chat GPT and Copilot on all of their platforms while they figure out their AI stuff. So there may be little things, but there's those are the kinds of things that don't hit their reports. And you just, the places you hear things, there's in Mr. Hiley's, in Mr. Hiley's 10 or 15-minute talk at the beginning of the board report on the board meeting on Wednesday, and then also then in the executive session, which all board members from member co-op, so we're able to attend up until they start going into legal stuff. So I think we find enough stuff to make it valuable for us and as LPEA, and we do it in a safe way in that until there is a tri-state rep meeting where, we're fully involved, we're doing this all remotely, so there's no chance of accidentally saying something that might jeopardize the settlement or anything like that. So I think it brings more value. I think it certainly brings in more than $240 worth of value, and period.
Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, I'll jump in on comments there. I agree with that. To me, this is a valuable additive. Information cost benefit is really good. Yeah, every board member has the ability to to dig in and find this information, but not every board member does. And so having having that information collected by one person and reported to the board, I think, is valuable. I hear the concern about, okay, well, this is a very temporary position, but we don't really know how temporary it is. I think we're optimistic, that we, that we get a settlement and that we're moving into a position where we could actually, LPEA could actually sit on that board again, but we don't know when that is. For those reasons, I would be in favor of Kirsten's motion. Nicole?
I would just echo that. I think, I don't want to just hear Tri-State's version of what's going on. I want someone who's been given authority and responsibility from LPEA's board to come back and let us know what's important to us. Because some of the things that matter to us might not make the bullet point list. And then I agree also, I hope that we get the negotiated settlement in January, but we might not. So I think, if we've got a willing board member to do this, I don't think the financial ramifications are really something to consider at all. And I'd like to go forward with it.
Thanks for the input, Nicole. Tim, you've got the mic.
Yeah, I think it's prudent. I don't have a problem with this. And the cost is small compared to the potential payback. And frankly, I don't want to meet a member and say, well, I saved $240 and this month, but Tri-State made some decision that we weren't aware of either. That's not a good position to be in. But I guess my real question here is, does the decision on establishing this, we're not, just to clarify, we're not actually picking who that is yet. That's another decision that we would make. And okay.
That would be true, Tim, based on Kirsten's motion. This is should LPEA have that, should LPEA strive to fill that position. We still need to go through the nomination and voting process to fill it.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion then on Kirsten's motion? Okay, we'll move to vote. All in favor of establishing this position, raise your hand and say aye.
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 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I get 9. Okay.
Okay. All opposed?
Aye.
2.
I see 2.
3 opposed.
I just see 2.
Wait, or 2. I think it's just 2. That would make more mathematical sense. It's just 2.
Okay.
That's everybody.
Yeah, and abstentions shouldn't be any. Okay, that motion passes. Then we need to move into considering who would fill this position. Any nominations or self-nominations for that? Tim?
So, yeah, I'm prepared to make a nomination, but is this purely for the monitoring position, or do we
Yes.
make another decision later?
Yeah, that's true. Kirsten's motion was clear that this would just be for the monitoring position. We would make another decision if and when we're able to, I guess if and when we get a settlement and we're in a legally safe position to refill the tri-state board seat. Is that clear?
I guess so. So yeah, I would nominate Kohler if he's willing.
Yeah, Kohler, would you accept that?
No, I'm going to pass it this time, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Can I nominate Kirsten then?
Yeah, you can still have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I accept the nomination.
Okay. And Kirsten, your hand went down after that. So, okay. Any other nominations? All right. So we just have Kirsten, who's accepted a nomination to serve in this role. Let's see. So Graham walked me through it. We're just going to do a affirmation confirmation vote here. Okay, so all in favor of putting Kirsten in this role, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. You ready to go to work, Kirsten?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your willingness. All right, great. Okay, so unless someone yells at me when I move on, I think we've now made it through the board action agenda. And gets us down to section 9 of the agenda, reports. So starting with attorney report, Graham.
I'll just refer to my written report in the board packet and take any questions.
Anybody for Graham? Okay, well, then we'll move past that. We'll move to director reports. Anything that any of the directors from Roundup, CREA, Western United want to bring up in their reports, or questions from the rest of the board about those 3 reports? Holly.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everybody, for allowing me to represent at CREA. I would just like to say that I had a lot of really great comments on CEO Hansen's participation at that meeting. There seemed to be some real excitement about that. And I had to sit at the big boys table up at the front of the room. No, just kidding, but I did. I don't know how I felt about that, but that was okay. Thank you. So in the meeting, I did mention to the CRA board, because I wear the dual hat, that we have talked a little bit about whether we are getting a good value proposition from NRECA and CREA's direction and where they are going. So this did cause some alarm among the board, because they're having discussions about associate memberships and whatnot, just to bring in more people. And there was a big preamble. I did send out a written report. It was late and not in the board packet, so I hope you guys got to see that. But there was a big preamble before that about inclusivity and, diversity of thought and opinion. So like I said, it's kind of concerning to them. They want to bring all the cooperatives into the cooperative family, which includes CORE. So that's always piece of their discussion. So it came up that CORE is also getting big enough that they have their own lobbyists, they have their own education department and safety department. So they're not really in need of CREA services. So That was just kind of interesting piece about that. So all of this happened at just about the same time I received that letter from staff that we sent to Senator Hickenlooper about supporting the Permitting Reform Act. And if you noticed in my report, NRECA currently opposes that particular piece of legislation. And so in my mind, it just kind of reinforces this loop of, you know, we have to continually assess whether we're getting bang for our buck in these organizations. And so I think in the long run, what I'm really just asking you guys for is some consideration of strategy going forward with CREA. Because, for instance, I fully supported the staff's question and decision about being able to supply the safety and loss, you know, training that our staff thinks that they need more. You know, they felt like they could do it better and they pulled out last year, but it happened very abruptly right at the end of the year. So I'm asking that if we go forward, if we start determining that we want to evaluate whether that's a good bang for our buck, that we do it prior to right at the end of the year before budget season. So another thing that I had been kind of thinking about in this whole process was something that came up when Nicole and Kirsten were working on the NRECA resolutions for geothermal. And something that I've been rolling around in my head is maybe going through an NRECA resolution process surrounding distributed energy and virtual power plants. I don't know if this is something this board has an appetite for or would like to maybe support, but what I see in the process is even if I had to do a bunch of research and presentation to CREA, there's a general, like, I don't believe that we have to have a really incredibly expensive energy transition going forward, but that's where a lot of them are. They don't have the capacity and the staff and the size to be able to supply a lot of what, like, for instance, CORE can do for themselves, or we are increasingly able to do with training and safety and loss and education and so on and so forth. So I've written to you guys before. I think there's a value proposition both ways because it behooves us to at least look at what our participation there does for us, you know, stronger together type thinking. But it also, I think, after I told them that we were really trying to think about whether, you know, we're getting some bang for the buck, one of the fellow board directors told me that LPEA provides a window into the future that maybe their cooperative should be pursuing, but they don't have the capacities to be able to do so yet. So I'm really just asking for some direction because I really, in the past, I have not had a lot of direction as far as that goes. And so I guess I'll stop right there for any questions or comments. Or stunned silence. Oh, Kirsten.
Everyone's reaching for the button. So Kirsten.
Yeah, looking for the button. That's right. So Holly, you're asking for comments now, or are you asking for written comments, or kind of a combination of?
I'll take either or both.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not prepared to give to give you verbal ones right now. I have opinions. I'm just not ready to. I don't. My brain's not letting them formulate right now. So I'd love to give them to you, but I didn't want to leave you with stunned silence.
Thank you. So, yeah, I'm sorry I dropped this on you guys, just like we've had that discussion a couple of times this meeting. So here you go. Here's the CRA one.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing it up. And it's not like it's a new topic. We've been kind of mulling this around in one sense or another for a while. And I do get frustrated with NRECA. I did see they are out there supporting not taking the IRA away with the new administration. So I was pleased to see that. Of course, they originally didn't support the IRA, but that was 2 years ago. So yeah, let me get back to you, and I think you deserve an answer probably from each of us. Or what are our thoughts on CRA and the lobbying and the NRECA, and what do we get and what do we not get? Thank you so much for asking us.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Kirsten, for kind of framing it up that way. I mean, Holly, I don't think you sprung this on us, right? This is a topic that's been stewing for a long time, and we need to figure out how to to move towards resolution on it. And so you bringing it up is very helpful in that regard. Kirsten, your comment about everyone should have an opinion on this, I think that's very true. So everyone feel free to begin to weigh in on your thoughts about CREA and what are the benefits and the drawbacks to certain types of membership there. So let's keep thinking about it. Chris, what are your thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, if it's appropriate, Ted and Holly, I thought I might just add, there were kind of two meetings happening at about the same time. So we had the managers meeting or CEO meeting that was happening the day before and then into that morning. And then we had a joint meeting with all the directors. It was great to join Holly for that. And, I think a very similar dynamic for me. I think I'm in my own mind really questioning the current value proposition. I think Holly and I had a chance to talk about it in Denver. It certainly has been great to get to know the other CEOs, and many of them are in the middle of very similar things to what we're doing. So there is that chance to listen and learn to each other. I know most of those folks, from my previous life. So I think I'd probably be able to do that anyway, but it was great to have that chance at the meeting. A couple of things to highlight, though. We did have a big legislative discussion, and was, I think, able to provide some timely feedback on the current CREA strategy, which in October, I don't think was a very good one. And we, was able, I think, to add some value there right out of the gate as far as the wildfire litigation legislation that they're looking at. And I think their version 1 of that was probably not passable. So added some input on that in both the managers meeting and the joint board meeting, and I hopefully strengthen the legislative direction. A CREA has hired a lobbyist now, both in-house and a contract lobbyist, but it's pretty late in the game. I'm kind of skeptical of the ability of that kind of lateness to then translate into effective wins in this next session. So I shared that with everybody, and a lot of great back and forth with my peers on that topic. As you can imagine, the CREA members, all of them are dealing with risk insurance and how do we handle either increased costs or lack of any insurance because people are being dropped because the risk is so high. And do we need a legislative response to deal with that for our members across the state? And so that was the conversation. I think it was a useful one. The last thing I'll mention is that Mr. Singer, who's the CEO or executive director of CREA, he did approach me to say, hey, we'd really like you guys back in the fold, on all of the different things that we do, including safety. I said, I appreciate that question, and we're going to be having discussions like this one to evaluate our role going forward. So I had a very similar experience to Holly. I appreciate her great written comments, and just wanted to make sure folks kind of knew what happened on my side of the fence with those meetings.
Chris, Rachel, what comments do you have on this?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's coming to my mind is while I have a semi-informed understanding of CREA in this space and what they do and what they don't do, or where we align or where we don't, or maybe some of the challenges in navigating their internal process, I don't think I have as informed of an understanding of kind of how much sway they bring in the power space or not. So if you're like to leave this entity, do we ultimately then lose our ability, like Chris just mentioned, to try to sway them in a certain way? And then they're bringing something forward, we don't like it, but ultimately the legislature sees them as actually the voice and effective. So I think I would need a greater understanding of the clout they hold and a few other contextual pieces. Otherwise, I feel like my input could be quite dangerous because it's just about what we see within them.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, knowing just enough to be dangerous, right? Common saying. And I think that goes, very much to, to Holly's sort of request and Kirsten's support of, we all have questions. We all have, not only questions, but input. And I think it's good to hear those. Speaking of hearing those, Nicole.
Yeah, well, first off, Holly, you're such an asset to LPEA. Both your thoughtfulness and your communication are so appreciated in this space. I kind of see them as two different entities to be considered to me. And I think that I don't want to overstep. I feel like I've already kind of vocalized how I feel. I don't think that NRECA is being much of a leader in this space. So to me, I see the value of us being part of NRECA as trying to vocalize a minority opinion and to offer other, ideas about the future. So I think, because oftentimes I read through what NRECA puts out and I disagree. And I'm like, we're paying this organization to fight for things that I disagree with, and that's a little hard to stomach. So, that was kind of when with the whole geothermal resolution, I was like, the only way I could make this okay for me is to feel like I'm being productive in this space, other than just paying for lobbyists against my personal interest on behalf of LPA. So CREA I see as a little bit more complicated, and I appreciate that you keep thinking about this, but there are just so many more practical realities of things that we share in common with other co-ops, that I see. CREA to me seems like more of a, I could see us agreeing to stay in CREA and getting out of NRECA if that is an option. So that's where I stand, and thank you again, Holly.
Thanks, Nicole, and yeah, ditto to those to the kudos for Holly. I don't see any more hands, but I'd like to maybe dump this back on you, Holly, because you are doing a good job. And what I see here is there are you're asking for feedback, but you're asking for feedback really from two sources. You're asking for feedback from the board and also from staff in terms of what values or lack of value do we see, and helping to clarify that whole picture. Would you be willing to sort of be in charge of driving to those solutions? And I don't want to put you out on an island. I mean, I'm happy to participate in that, and I think maybe a step there is for sort of staff and board to get together to figure out what the process moving forward is. And I would volunteer from the board side, and I would volunteer Chris from the staff side. Maybe the three of us have a meeting and decide how we push this concern forward and get the feedback that you're looking for. Does that sound reasonable, Holly?
I think it's really good because, I mean, with the sound strategy, we're going to get stronger. And, it was my duty to tell CREA this, because then they can work to do something, that maybe makes them better in the long run too. It's a dual purpose. So I do appreciate you all spending the time to think about it and offer whatever thoughts or comments or suggestions come up, and I'll collect them and consolidate them and, work with you, Ted, and CEO Hansen to figure out a proposition for the board.
Tim, go ahead, please.
Yeah, without getting too deep into my own view of these two organizations, on a sort of top level, I think there are times where both of them, especially in our ECA, seems to be running counter to, in their political positions, counter to what many of the members of LPA would express to me, to the extent that they're aware of that, and if not, sort of, I'm interpreting. At the same time, I think there are, in both of these organizations, there are benefits that we receive. For example, I think of, for example, two CEO searches in which NRECA provided some really solid data for us to consider. in terms of both salary and other aspects and so forth. And I don't really, and that's, I just use that as an example. I think there are others. There's the training and so forth, right? So I guess it's hard for me to judge, the pro con of either of those without knowing a little more about what it is that we receive in those benefits versus their political stance, right? So these seem to me to be somewhat separate, right? And if there's a way to sort of disagree with a political stance or separate somehow our participation or our apparent support, assumed support of those things without a discussion versus tangible benefits and training and administrative support, that would be really helpful in making a decision on continued participation for either of them. So I just, in that context you were outlining of getting together and trying to pull together, information for us to consider, I offer that's a delineation that would help me a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that viewpoint, Tim. And yeah, thanks for making the decision complicated. But I mean, right, it is, and it's supposed to be. I mean, that's why we're challenged with it. That's why it's going to take a process to kind of get to the point where we can compare benefits and drawbacks and try and make the most informed decision we can. So thanks for pointing that out. Anything else, Holly?
Yeah, I really appreciate the consolidation too of what the staff sees as benefits too, because that's the side I don't see as much. For instance, the CREA education staff says that all their classes are certified, which draws people in from around other states because not every state can offer certified classes. So, just little pieces like that are really important, I think, in the long run. But, I'm kind of wishy-washy, and I appreciate your comments, Tim. NRECA, I can see going either way, but I do also have some belief that there's some of their executive staff on the NRECA board is actually starting to try to put more thought of the impacts of pollution into the lexicon of NRECA. So there is like things that I see is starting to inch forward in some respects. So that kind of leads me to believe that continued participation might also be beneficial. So I can go either way. I can make arguments either way. So that's why I need your guys' help.
All right. Really, really good discussion. Thanks for bringing it up, Holly. Is there anything else that we need to discuss related to the director reports? Okay. Seeing none, we're at the end of the agenda. Any final comments? I see Tim and then Kohler.
Yeah, this isn't about director reports. That's why I waited.
Yeah.
As usual, as my practice, at the holidays every year, I will be giving each of you a Be Local coupon book. I haven't yet arranged that with staff, but my hope is that I can drop them off tomorrow at the customer service counter, and each of the directors can come by and pick them up between now and the end of the year. I want to thank you all and wish you all a really happy holiday. And hopefully this, it's thousands of dollars worth of savings in your community. So you can think of it as me giving you a really big bonus, as well as thanking you for putting up with me for one more year. And I do appreciate it a lot. So happy holidays, everyone. Be sure to pick it up, and thank you.
That's awesome, Tim. Thank you. Thank you
Tim.
again for that. And I would also mention that it helps us fulfill our duty to support our local economy. So thank you for that. Go ahead, Kohler.
Yeah, one thing I'd like the board to consider as well as the staff, and that is when we do our meetings and stuff, different employees are brought up and mentioned and they're working on grants or whatever else, but I can't put a face to it. Is there any chance when we have in-person meetings that once in a while we could get introduced to some of these employees? I would appreciate that if we could. Well, thank you. Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yeah, we'll leave that in Chris's hands, but I'm sure that's a yes. Kirsten.
Yeah, Tim, it takes more than a book of coupons to have to put up with you for another year, my friend. Okay. But having said that, I do want to reflect on this year. You guys, we did a lot this year, and staff did a whole lot this year. This was a big bloody year for us. And take this time to reflect, and I really want to thank just staff who led us through this. And it was a hard year, and a lot of hard decisions were made, and everybody's support and each and every one of you had a major role in that, and I want to really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Much appreciated, Kirsten. As you said, take a nice deep breath and be ready to get after it again, because you know, much more to come. And I really enjoy doing this work with all of you. It's a great group, and we are doing a great job. Anybody else before we adjourn? All right. Happy holidays, all that good stuff. See you around.
See you around. Happy holidays. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.
Holidays. Adios.